live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping the military connected community start and grow their own business. I'm your host, Iron Mike Stedman, joined by my co-host, Ms. Amy Morrison, and our special guest today, Mr. Hark Harold. Amy and Hark, what is going on?
Hey, Mike, good to see you. How you doing?
Howdy.
Highly favored. I'm feeling great. I really enjoy what I do, and I love being able to get on these type of platforms and support the military connected community. So I figure what we'll start off with is, Amy, how about you talk about what's going on around the bunker?
Sure. Okay. So this week we've got two events. We've got Bunker Connect in Chattanooga, Tennessee, tomorrow, Wednesday, October 20th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we've got a Bunker Roundtable in Seattle on Thursday, October 21st at 6 p.m. And for more information on those events, you can now go to bunkerlabs.org/communities, our fancy new website and event page.
Awesome. Now, I'll tell you, I had an opportunity to participate in the Bunker Connect. It was a great roundtable that we had here locally, and it was amazing to have the support network for the community. We had a couple entrepreneurs that were there, and we originally the plan was to do a panel, and what we pivoted to was we allowed the entrepreneurs just kind of ask some questions that they were facing within their own ventures, and we got really good feedback from that and really good engagement. And I think it stresses the importance of getting out there and engaging with other entrepreneurs in the community who've been there, right? There's so much right now at this point. Bunker's been around, what, 5-6 years? We've got enough experience internally that I guarantee you that there's someone out there who's been what you're going through. So make sure y'all are getting out to these events, connecting with people online, and really start to engage the community. Now, for today, I'm excited because we got none other than Mr. Hark Harold, who's actually the COO of Bunker Labs, but is also a specialist at design thinking, also known as human-centered design. So we thought it'd be a great opportunity to get him on here and talk to us about what design thinking is and how you can start applying it in your own entrepreneurial journey. So Hark, welcome to Office Hours.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Yeah, and so this is fantastic because it enables me to tie together my two passions, helping the veteran entrepreneurs and using design thinking, human-centered design as people look at developing their business, whether they're a brand new startup or looking to make a pivot and just move forward, but always keeping their customer in the center of their mind.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of getting people on the Bunker Lab staff from behind the curtain, so people can kind of see what kind of expertise and stuff we're bringing to the community. And so let's just jump right in, Hart. Talk to us about what design thinking / human-centered design is. And then let's start by talking about, how we can use it to design a product or service that someone is actually willing to pay for.
Absolutely. So design thinking, also referred to as human-centered design, is really about keeping your customer at the center of whatever you're doing. It is whether you're designing a product, a process, or a service, it is what does your customer desire? What does your customer need? And looking at that. There are a lot of different models out there for design thinking. If you go to IDEO.org, they have some, the commercial side. IDEO does design thinking facilitation services, Stanford D School, Carnegie Mellon University School of Design, all sorts of different models out there, but they're really just saying the same thing. It's really about, and I use the double diamond approach, which is really about staying in the problem space to start with, understanding your customer, getting to know your customer, your desired customer, your target market, what are their needs? And then, so you diverge in that space, make sure you have the context around what the challenges are. You converge to see if your initial design statement or your initial thoughts on what was your customer's problem is correct. And then you diverge again in the solution space. This is where we'll do brainstorming and other ways to really try to get people to think differently about the ways to solve this challenge. And then you converge on what is that solution space. And you do that via using a minimum viable product or a prototype, right? Prototype is really just about testing your hypothesis on how you're going to solve this challenge. And the key is when you do a prototype or your minimum viable product, you have to get it in the customer's hands. You can't just keep iterating on it. Get it out there, get the feedback, let your customers touch, feel, experience whatever it is, because even if they don't like it at all, that's great feedback. Prototypes are for feedback. And so if you find out that you're going down the wrong path and they don't like it, that's great to know early in the process as opposed to later in the process.
So I got first introduced to design thinking when I was doing the Stanford Ignite program. So I had an opportunity to spend some time in the D school, like they call it, and
Mm-hmm.
it looked like a kindergarten room, right? There's all these different designs and toys and all this other stuff, but the whole concept behind that was building out that prototype. Now, as a design thinking practitioner, one of the questions I have for you is, how do people balance the spending all the time iterating, building out the prototype, doing all that, with actually getting out there and trying to drive sales or interacting with customers?
Yeah. So again, and one of the things people want to do is jump to a solution and say, here's a solution. Now I'll go find a problem that it solves. Right. And that's not going to work. So we spend a lot of time talking about, in that first diamond, in the double diamond approach, spending your time in the problem space, getting to understand it and know it. And yeah, that takes time, but you have to spend some time there. Otherwise, you're just a solution looking for a problem. Now, to your point, then how do you balance that? Yeah, so you get your minimum viable product out there, your prototype, right? And you may have 2 or 3 different versions of it that you're checking. You're getting it out there. You're getting the feedback, and you can charge for your prototype, right? The first time you do something, the first time you run a seminar, that's really a prototype, right? You're iterating. You're going to go in there, see what works, see what didn't, and just continue to refine all the time. But again, you got to do it based on your customers' feedback. What are they telling you? Otherwise, if you're just saying, well, I think it's this, it's not going to work.
So once we do that, right, we create the minimum viable product, we're out there in the market, we're hooking and jabbing. Can we still use design thinking for a more growth phase? So after
Oh,
we get like that first client?
yeah, absolutely. It is an ongoing iterative process always. When I do the double diamond approach, it looks linear, but it's not really. There's feedback loops. And if you look at the IDEO model and the D school, they're also iterative. But it's for whatever challenge. That's one of the reasons I really love design thinking. When I retired out of the Air Force, my last assignment was at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs to help set up the Cyber Innovation Center, which uses design thinking to tackle Air Force challenges in cyber. It uses a human-centered approach. And I was so excited about that. That's what I decided to do going forward into the civilian world. But I personally have used this process within the Air Force to look at how we present cyber information to non-cyber commanders. I worked with the Denver Broncos marketing partnerships team when they were looking at new ways to do their marketing or how to just improve what they're doing, to your point, right? I worked with a company on insourcing their IT. They had outsourced it and they wanted to bring it back in-house, and they wanted it to be customer friendly, so they didn't get known as the no help desk, which a lot of IT internal places get known as. And I also worked with the DoD's CIO, the Department of Defense Chief Information Officer, across the Department of Defense on how they can improve some of this stuff they had going on with IT security. So it is applicable to a broad range of challenges, and regardless of what stage you're in.
I want to, first of all, I like the idea of the human approach, right? Because I'm a big fan of this human to human now. Even with technology, right? There's still a relationship with regards to business. And I think that's important for people to understand. But I want to go to something that a lot of people struggle with, right? Which is marketing. Okay. So we've seen a lot of the programs within the Bunker Labs, a lot of our early stage programs, and a lot of entrepreneurs struggle actually taking a product to market. So talk to us about applying design thinking to a go-to-market phase.
Yeah. So in using it for a go-to-market phase, right? There's lots of different ways to get your voice out there. There's lots of different ways to make people known. So you can use a design thinking approach to, again, first establish the spend time in the problem space. What are you really trying to accomplish? a lot of times people will start with a design challenge, and then we do the exploration phase, and it turns out that really wasn't the challenge, right? But we spend time in that problem space and identify really there's a bigger return on investment if we tackle this challenge as opposed to the one you thought we were going to tackle. And then when you get into that in the solution phase, that's when you can brainstorm, look at different ways to get to market, different opportunities that are out there, and then prototype, test them, right? Run some tests, small, inexpensive tests. Run it by people and get their feedback on your logo or your newsletter or whatever, and see what the customers are really doing. And then the other thing is, right, you can have a great go-to-market strategy and execution, but you have to have a product that people want. So you need to make sure that you have the product, you're testing it, as well as the marketing strategy.
What do you think people do wrong when they're thinking about human-centered design? Because a lot of books out there, right? And we see the video boards and everything, but like, what is, like, I feel like you said, at its core though, what are people doing wrong?
A couple things. One is, as I mentioned, people like to jump to the solution space. They want to get to brainstorming on different ways to do it without first identifying really what is the best problem we can tackle for our company, for the organization, for humanity, whatever, right? Like what is that? And make sure they have that right. The second one is people can become enamored with customers love it, and this would solve their problems, and this is what we should do, without looking at the other aspects. So in a perfect world, you got a Venn diagram, right? You got the three circles when they overlap. In human-centered design, we want to approach, so one of those circles is desirability. We want to approach our challenge from a desirability lens. That's our how we start. Then there's a technical viability circle. So it has to be technically feasible, right? So desirable may be a time machine, but that may not be feasible. So you shouldn't spend all your time working on a time machine. And then the third circle is business or technical viability, business feasibility, right? So can you afford it? And can you make a money at it? So it's the intersection of those three circles is the key. Now, and again, in human-centered design, we approach it from desirability first. That's the first lens we put on it. If you approach it, and a lot of companies they'll approach it from a technical viability or business feasibility aspect, and you can make improvements. You can make things better, but you're not going to get a leap. You're not going to get a big movement that way, because desirability is kind of like the third thing you're looking at as opposed to the first thing. So it's number one, trying to jump to the solution phase. And then number two is, not applying the business and technical lenses to it at the right time.
Now, design thinking is a collaborative process, right? This is not something you want to do by yourself. This is where you want to bring in team members and other people. Talk to us about why that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, design thinking is not a singular activity. It's meant to be used by teams, and there's a lot of reasons with that. Some of the outcomes of design thinking that organizations have found as they've applied design thinking. Number one is they get higher quality solutions because it's starting with a broad base of inputs from a broad range. And you want cross-departmental, right? It might be somebody from marketing, somebody from operations, somebody from production, somebody from wherever, right? Engineering. You want a broad base. It reduces the innovation risk because you're bringing in other perspectives, so it minimizes biases coming into it. The other is it increases the implementation success, because the people who are going to be implementing the solution, right, they're part of designing. They're seeing the sausage being made. And if their idea isn't, taken, or if it gets, bypassed in favor of something else, it's part of the group process, and they get to understand why. Because change is painful when done to you, but change is powerful when done by you. And so if you can bring in the implementers into that, increases the risk of decreases the risk. You
Let me stop
provide
you
new,
real quick because
yeah.
I want to stop you real quick because we got a question from Tony Ellsworth, and I have a comment for it. But he wants to know, what if you're just a team of one?
Then find like your friends, family. You've got other people. You can use the Bunker Labs ecosystem, right? Get some trusted people that who can jump in and help you and who are willing to give you honest feedback.
I also want to say I've become a big fan of the indie hacker movement, and I'm going to talk about it when I give my book recommendation. But one of the things they do, Hark, is that they build in public. So they're
Yeah.
in Slack groups, right? They're in private channels. They write the problems that they're facing on Twitter, and they invite people into the conversation. So that can be another way, Tony, of you can still go through this kind of human-centered approach. And again, these are all assumptions, but instead of, if you don't have anyone, just start blogging and writing about it, inviting people into the conversation. And then maybe that'll be a
Yeah.
good way. That's just me thinking outside the box.
No, I think that's great, Mike. I think that's, again, it's all about the community, and, all of us are smarter than any of us. And so ability to get that, and especially if it's your customers, right? Hearing from them is the key.
So we've talked about what design thinking is. We've talked about how to apply it in early stages, how to use it for go to market. Is there anything else we should cover with our audience on design thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, again, it's all about taking action and trying things out. One of the things that I mentioned at the beginning is you have to listen to your customers and do what they're asking you to do. See how they're using your products, right? Avon had the Skin So Soft, which was marketed to women to increase their skin health, right, and skin tone. And they found out people were using it for bug spray for their kids, right? And so they iterated, to your point, on the marketing. They didn't change the product. They iterated on their marketing and said, hey, people are using our product to do these things. Why don't we market to them and drive sales that way, as opposed to it simply being, ad hoc? So I think a lot of it is, again, getting that customer feedback.
Yeah. And I actually have another question for you, right? Bill Burnett wrote a book called Designing Your Life. I forgot the other guy's name as well.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're starting to see people think about how they can apply design thinking to our own personal lives, right? Integrating our business and our family and everything else. Can you expand upon that?
Yeah. So and again, it's the same kind of concept, right? What are you trying to achieve? What is the challenges that are precluding you from, in this case, living your best life or living what you want to do? And so it's, what are the things that are getting in the way? And then how can I minimize those? How if I cut this out, does that help me get to where I want to do? Or if I start doing something else, does that help me get to where I want my life to be? And it's really about, again, making those small changes, testing them, seeing if it works. In this case, you are your customer. So, getting the product in your customer's hands in this case should be pretty easy. But you're still going to get that feedback from the others in your life.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Hart, I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff, right? Because part of it is you got to get out there and figure out what kind of life you want, even as an entrepreneur. A lot of times you think you want these $1 billion, $1 million companies, but do you want $1 million problems? And more often, a lot of people don't. And I've come to realize that in my own life. Like, I want to enjoy work each and every day. For me, that's important. So I try to seek opportunities that allow me to do that. But that's what I've been able to get from my feedback in my own entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, one of the things that I really, really appreciate with Bunker Labs is that we are not focused solely on tech companies or companies that are looking to scale or for VC funding. We really do look for the broader community, because I think those, whether you want to call them lifestyle businesses or mom and pop or whatever, but sole proprietorships, those types of activities where it's, hey, listen, I am an entrepreneur who is, making a good life, providing for myself and my family potentially. Those are the key to America coming back, right? We're going to have some of the big time, companies do amazing things. But really the backbone is going to be those smaller businesses that are just out there providing a service in their community and making things better for everybody.
We call those Main Street entrepreneurs,
Main
or
Street.
third
All
shift
right.
entrepreneurs. So what I want to do is, as we transition to book reviews, right? For those of you that are tuning in, if you have a question on anything entrepreneurship related or human-centered design, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat. That way we can see it as we go over our book reviews. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go first. And my book recommendation for the week is Marketing for Developers by Justin Jackson. I mentioned before, I came across what's called the indie hacker movement or indie entrepreneurs. And there's a whole group of entrepreneurs that are building SaaS platforms without venture capital. And so they have their own approach with this market first mentality, essentially finding opportunities where there's already demand and people are already spending money and creating a tech product for that market. And Justin is a big proponent of building in public. He's kind of built his platform on that. So he's got tons of videos and stuff out there. And I've come across him because his company Transistor, which they got to probably about 100K a month in recurring revenue plus, he bootstrapped with him and another founder without VC. And so he has a group called Mega Makers that I'm a part of. I'm a big fan again of his stuff. And so his book, Marketing for Developers, at the end of the day, everyone is somewhat of a tech company in 2021, right? You've got to have some kind of online presence. And if you don't have one, you're going to fade away. So really recommend checking this book out, understanding how developers should approach marketing by driving sales early on and validating that they have something that someone is willing to pay for. And then how you can level up, with basic blogging and SEO and other things. So check this book out. What about you, Hart? Any book recommendations?
Yeah. So Tony likes books with cartoons in them. So I was trying to find a good one here. So this book is, let's see, we have cartoons.
There you go.
So the book is called Game Storming, and it is about different activities to get people to, you can use it at different stages in the design thinking process. Some of it is used for getting people to get to know each other and break down barriers. Others are how to do brainstorming, maybe doing brainstorming in some different ways, because there is also a brain writing exercise, which is great if you have a lot of introverts. Because it allows them to be heard as opposed to just being overstepped by the extroverts. I worked with a lot of engineers when I was in the military, and there's some introverts in there whose perspectives are valuable, but they had a hard time getting them out. So different ways to brainstorm, different ways to do your prototypes, different ways to get your product out in front of customers for feedback. So yeah, so game storming, and then I cheated and have a second one. So it is a beautiful constraint. And so this is all about how constraints actually help us be innovative, and that's where great opportunities arise, like Airbnb, right? They saw that they needed a place to stay and couldn't afford a place, and so they crashed at a friend's, and from that Airbnb came because they said it has to be cheap, it has to meet these things, we have to do this. So a beautiful constraint can really help in your design process to impose a constraint. It just makes people more creative.
Love it. Well, Hart, any closing remarks you'd like to leave our viewers with today as they continue on their entrepreneurial journeys?
No, I'm just really excited to be part of the community, and in my role at Bunker to be helping to support the programs such as this, Mike, with our amazing sponsors, MetLife and Gannett, and then just overall JP Morgan Chase, USAA, Price Waterhouse, and all the others. So I'm just excited to be part of the community and would love to know how I can help more.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate having you on Office Hours. And for those that are tuning in, make sure you check out those books. And again, this just shows some of the people you have working on your behalf behind the scenes. And Hart, cracks the whip, make sure things move smoothly, so the programs and everything are running. So again, thank you for what you do with Bunker Labs, and thank you for joining us today. And for all of you that are tuning in, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, The Transition, yet, I highly encourage you to do so. One second. So Simon Brown says, I bought the Entrepreneur Manual this week. Which parts did I say were the most helpful? In that book, check out the market gap analysis. And he really teaches you how to niche down and find opportunities where there's already a market need. And then also he has a chapter called Growth and Glamour Industries. So these are industries that are moving. Again, a bunch of money is pumping into it. Wall Street is pumping money into it. That's an example of growth and glamour. So check that book out. Read the market analysis chapter and the growth and glamour. And then next week's office hours, let's talk about it. But going back to the transition. Yep.
One more thing. So yeah, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. Anyone? It's Joe Hark Harold. And Hark is my call sign, my nickname. I know if somebody tries to connect to me on LinkedIn and says, hey, Joe, can we connect? I know they don't really know me. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and look forward to seeing how I can continue to help. Thanks, Mike. Back over to you.
Yeah, that's why I have Iron Mike Stedman. I get all these emails on LinkedIn. Hi, Iron. Clearly you don't know who I am. But going back to the transition, right? Make sure y'all are listening to the Transition podcast. I've got a couple pods I really recommend for y'all. Number one, check out the 5 stages of small business growth that I recorded with Michelle Warner. That is a great podcast. I'm telling you, it's going to save you a lot of trouble. Today, this week, I'm actually releasing a podcast on advice for launching a new venture. This was based on feedback from those entrepreneurs at the Bunker Connect, where they were asking questions. So I took those questions and wrote them down and shared the advice that we gave to them. And then today on our newsletter, I'm going to ask you all on the newsletter, hey, what is something that you're struggling with in your own ventures? I'm struggling with managing team and managing growth, right? So I want to hear feedback from you all. That way we can refine what kind of content we create on the podcast. So if you haven't subscribed to the Transition podcast, be sure to do so. Again, we have a newsletter and the pod, and I'm going to send a newsletter out as soon as I jump off of here today. I'd like to thank our virtual event sponsors for today, the MetLife Foundation and the Garnet Foundation that make this possible. The MetLife Foundation is committed to supporting veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs. In addition, the foundation also provides mentorship and financial health resources to veterans and military spouses transitioning into the workforce. And A Community Thrives is a program funded by the Garnet Foundation and is part of the USA Today network, which invests in community building initiatives across the country with the goal of creating positive change through service to historically marginalized or under-resourced groups. Make sure y'all are checking out our new website, bunkerlabs.org. Shout out to the marketing team and Carrie Sue for all the hard work she put into updating that site to make it easy for you all to find what programs are a good fit for you and get you plugged into the community. So head over to bunkerlabs.org. And if I'm not mistaken, Hark, isn't there a design-centered, a design thinking course on Bunker Online?
Yes, one that we did in partnership with Intuit. So yes, so that's available via the Bunker Online. Should be able to find it easily.
Perfect. All right, make sure y'all are checking for updates. Stay plugged in, and we'll see you all next week on Office Hours. Peace, love. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, y'all.